Hi folks, back again, Basso Chronicles number 163. I've been thinking about this one for a while, and I sort of title it Living Small. One of the major problems we all have is we don't know what we don't know. That is, well, it's obvious, okay. In other words, we just don't know what's out there that we aren't aware of. On a real, this is an absurd example. But let's say we wanted to go out and buy a car, and we thought cars only came in 4 colors, like red, blue, yellow, green, or something. Let's just assume that hypothetically for this example. Now, if we didn't know black existed, and we bought like red, but then we realize black exists, and we say, man, that's the black car is, much better than my red car. Well, that's one of the problems of not knowing what you don't know. In this absurd example I've given, that means we didn't even know there was such a color as black. So when we made a decision as to what color car to buy, we weren't even aware of that. So when we go forward a few years and we find out that there is a black, then we discover we made a bad decision. But we made a bad decision because we didn't know what we didn't know. Okay, what am I working up to here? Living small. If I could go back 50 years, that's tough to say. I'm 71, so if I could go back to when I was like 20 or something, I don't know if I would do this, but I'll tell you what sounds like a heck of a good idea. And that would be, at the age of 20, say to yourself that you want to become independent, so to speak, from the system as soon as possible. And you want to get to a position as soon as possible so that you don't have to work. I'm not saying you wouldn't work, or that you would work, so that you don't have to. Now, how can we do that? Okay, and unless we win the lottery, and come on, we know we aren't going to do that, then we're going to have to work to bring this thing about, whatever it is I'm talking about here, this living small kind of thing. And how do we do that? Okay, first thing we need to do, let's say we're 18, 19, 20 or whatever, we need to try to decide what kind of work we're going to do. And whether we want to learn a trade, like become a plumber, electrician, car mechanic, or something like that, computer person, or what have you. Whether we want to go to college, and what do we want to study, and what are our primary objectives. Do we want to just go to college to get the degree that will give us the most money, or is there something in our life that we would actually like to do and we'll settle for less money, like be a teacher or something like that? Or do we want to be a police officer? Do we want to join the service? Whatever. But we do need some kind of plan and some kind of direction here. Now, the first thing we say to ourselves is we aren't going to get in debt no matter what. In other words, you can't get in debt. Might cut you a little slack on buying a car, but it has to be a modestly priced car. I know I've made a lot of mistakes with cars. I bought, well, I was going to say it's embarrassing, but no, it really isn't. I think I bought 6 or 7 new cars in the past 7 or 8 years or so. And that's ridiculous, because you take those big hits when you sell those things. And what you should do is buy cars from people like me who buy new cars and get rid of them in a hurry. So watch the car buying, especially if you're a guy. We get all hopped up on buying these fast cars and all that kind of stuff. Okay, if you have this big plan for trying to get to a point where you really aren't struggling, week to week and paycheck to paycheck, you've got to, you got to use some discretion here, and you've got to use, what's that word I'm groping for? I don't know. Some self-control. Okay, self-control. Now, ideally, you're going to love this one. What would really be neat as far as living small is living small in a couple of ways. Living small as far as what you're living in, and living small as far as your spending. In other words, not let your spending get out of control. For the past few years, I guess 4, 5, 6, 7 years, I've wanted to move to the country and have a small log cabin or something, or a small cottage of some kind. Get out to the country, 10, 15, 20 acres. Get way out there. It's fairly cheap, and you can actually get, you can buy these properties, at least in our area, within 45 minutes of being able to drive to work, which isn't that bad. But if you start off young and you don't start accumulating all this stuff, and I talked about stuff the last time I was up here, then that leaves you some freedom to move around. But if you start right away, you get married, have a bunch of kids, and you're trying to buy the biggest daggone house you can. You've got 3 cars, and you're buying that speedboat you always wanted, and on and on and on. You're going to turn around one day, and you've had the weenie. In other words, you've got these huge, huge payments coming out every month, and you can't even breathe. That's not living small. But that's what most of us do. You know, we want a bigger and bigger house. We want a bigger and bigger car. We want more cars. We want a bigger boat. And sadly, most of us actually buy these things. Then we turn around and we're like 60 years old. We really have not much of anything. We haven't saved any money, and we're still in debt. And the man will rule. I mean, we just aren't going to be free from the shackles, you know what I mean? But in all seriousness, I really shouldn't talk about my personal life or anything, but I'll talk about it a little bit. I'm on my way in a couple of months to pick up a small travel trailer. I'm not sure how this is going to go. I've never had a travel trailer. But for some reason, a few weeks ago, I decided I wanted a travel trailer. Okay. Now, I have lived small one time. About 20-some years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, I bought a modest-sized sailboat. And I lived on the boat for about 3 or 4 years. And that's living small. I got rid of just about everything except books that I stored at my mom's house and a few other things. But basically got rid of everything. And I lived on that daggone boat. And it was really kind of cool. It was a real simple life. Excuse me. And there are people now traveling around the United States in small travel trailers, these huge monster bus things, RVs. But there are a lot of people out there with modest incomes, you know, from Social Security or from their pension plans or whatever. They seem to be living a heck of a life. And they're living in these small trailers, you know, going from park to park or whatever. Well, you can just like buy a small trailer and park that little guy somewhere. But the main thing you need to do is there has to be this balance between your money, what you're doing with it, how much your indebtedness is, and what your ultimate goals are. And I swear, I think most of us, if we started out and were pretty darn careful and paid our dues at our younger years, you know, in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, most of us could most likely retire when we're 45 or 50. You know, if we actually paid attention to what we're doing, instead of buying things like maniacs that we are, you know. If you take a simple thing, I like to go out and eat, and you know, some of the in our area here, we surely don't have the most expensive restaurants. I'm sure it's nothing like New York, but you can easily go out and spend $50, $60, $70 for 2 people to eat for dinner. And if you say to yourself, if I never did that, and I thought about going out, instead I stayed home and had a hot dog and put $70 in the bank, you know, how much money would you have when it all, you know, when it all washed out? But anyway, that's living small. It sounds like a heck of a good idea. Now, if I was transported back to the age of 20, would I try and live small? Yes, I would. I really, truly would. And I would get me like a keeper or something who would not allow me to buy all the junk I've bought. I'll tell you. That's our downfall. We buy that damn stuff. Anyway, I hope you got a kick out of this and maybe a chuckle or two. And I guess that's it. To finish up number 163, and as Pat Condell would say, peace. And folks, consider living small for a couple of days. Bye.